Chapter 1. A disheartening reality. Tyler sat on the bleachers, watching the male volleyball team practice. The sound of sneakers squeaking against the gym floor and the rhythmic thwack of the ball hitting hands and arms filled the air. It was the same sound he'd fallen in love with years ago, the same sound that still set his heart racing. But today, as he watched the players dive, spike, and block with ease, there was a familiar ache in his chest, one that had become all too common. He had tried out again this year, just like every year before. And once again, he'd been cut. Not because of a lack of skill. Tyler knew he was good. His technique was flawless, his dedication unmatched. But every time he stepped onto the court, his small frame seemed to betray him. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how many hours he spent practicing, his 5'6" body could never compete with the towering, muscular guys who dominated the male team. They jumped higher, hit harder, moved faster, and Tyler, despite his best efforts, couldn't keep up. Frustrated, he ran a hand through his tousled brown hair and sighed. His eyes scanned the court, lingering on the taller players. It wasn't fair. He knew he had the heart, the passion, the drive, but it seemed like all anyone cared about was height and strength. The taller you were, the better your chances. The stronger your build, the more likely you were to catch the coach's eye. As the practice ended and the team began to disperse, Tyler stood up and made his way to the exit. He was tired of feeling invisible, tired of being overlooked. He needed to talk to someone who understood, someone who wouldn't just tell him to try harder or wait until next year. That someone was his sister, Emma. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table when Tyler got home, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, a book spread open in front of her. She looked up the moment he walked in, her face lighting up with a smile. Hey, Ty, she greeted warmly, but her smile quickly faded when she saw the look on his face. Didn't go well. Ha! Tyler dropped his bag on the floor and collapsed into the chair across from her. Same as always. They didn't even give me a second look after the first round. It's like I don't exist out there. Emma frowned, closing her book. It's not fair, she said softly. You're better than half the guys on that team. Doesn't matter, Tyler mumbled, staring at the table. I'm too small. I'll never be able to compete with them. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But it's not. Emma was quiet for a moment, studying her brother's face. She knew how much volleyball meant to him, how hard he had worked. She had seen him spend countless hours practicing, pushing himself to the limit. And yet, every year, the result was the same. It broke her heart to see him so defeated. Ty? She began cautiously. What if there was another way? Tyler looked up at her, confused. What do you mean? Emma hesitated, her mind racing. She wasn't sure if she should even suggest it, but the idea had been floating around in the back of her head for a while now. It was crazy. Ridiculous, even. But what if it wasn't? What if you, she said. How? Half jokingly. Tyler blinked, taken aback. What? What? I mean, think about it. Emma continued, leaning forward slightly. You're already an amazing player. You have the technique, the skill, the drive. The only thing holding you back is, well, your size. But that wouldn't be an issue on the women's team. Tyler stared at her, dumbfounded. Emma, I can't just walk in there as a guy and expect them to let me play. Emma shrugged, but there was a spark in her eyes now. What if you didn't have to go in as a guy? What are you talking about? Tyler asked, though he had a vague idea where this was going. What if you could change? Emma said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. What if you could become a girl? Tyler gaped at her. Become a girl? Emma, that's insane. I know, she said quickly. I know it sounds crazy, but what if it's possible? Haven't you ever thought about it? I mean, you've always said that your size is the only thing holding you back. What if this is a way to fix that? Tyler shook his head, trying to wrap his mind around what she was suggesting. I don't know. I mean, even if I wanted to, it's not like I could just wake up tomorrow and be a girl. It doesn't work like that. No, of course not. Emma agreed, her mind still racing. But there might be ways. I've heard stories, you know, about people who've changed physically. I don't know if any of it's true, but maybe we could look into it. Tyler leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This is insane. Maybe, Emma said, her voice softening. But maybe it's not. You've always said you'd do anything to make the team, right? What if this is your chance? Tyler didn't respond right away. He stared at the kitchen wall, his mind whirling with a million thoughts. Could it be possible? Could he really change his body, become someone else entirely? The idea seemed absurd, impossible, but at the same time, it was tempting. The thought of finally being able to play on a team, to not be held back by his own body, was intoxicating. He'd spent so many years feeling like he was stuck, like he was trapped in a body that didn't fit the dream he had. But becoming a girl? That was a whole different level of commitment. It wasn't just about volleyball anymore. It was about his entire identity. I don't know. Emma, he said finally, his voice quiet. Even if it's possible, is it really worth it? I mean, I'd have to change everything. What would people think? What would Mom and Dad say? Emma reached across the table and took his hand. I can't answer that for you, Ty. But I do know this. You deserve to chase your dreams. You deserve to play the sport you love. And if this is the only way to make that happen, then maybe it's worth considering. Tyler stared at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to laugh it off, to tell her she was crazy and forget the whole thing. But the more he thought about it, the more the idea took root in his mind. Could he really do it? Could he transform into someone else? Someone who could finally live the life he wanted? I don't know, he said again. But this time, there was less certainty in his voice. Emma smiled softly. You don't have to decide right now. But maybe we could just look into it. See if it's even possible. If it's not, then no harm done. Right? Tyler hesitated, but finally, he nodded. Okay, he said quietly. Let's look into it. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into research. She scoured the internet for any information she could find on physical transformations, gender changes, and anything else that might help. Tyler, meanwhile, tried to keep a level head about the whole thing. He told himself it was just a silly idea, something that would never actually work. But each time he saw Emma hunched over her laptop, scrolling through pages of information, he felt a tiny flicker of hope in his chest. One evening, Emma burst into Tyler's room, her eyes wide with excitement. Ty? I think I found something. Tyler looked up from his phone. What is it? There's this place, she said breathlessly. An old antique shop downtown. It's supposed to have magical items, things that can grant wishes, change your life. People say it's just a myth, but what if it's real? Tyler raised an eyebrow. An antique shop? Really? I know. It sounds ridiculous, Emma admitted. But if there's even the slightest chance it could work, don't you think it's worth a shot? Tyler hesitated, but the look in Emma's eyes was contagious. She believed in this, believed in him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could believe too. Okay, he said slowly. Let's check it out. And with that, their journey toward the impossible began. Chapter 2. The First Step. Tyler and Emma stood at the entrance of the antique shop, its weathered sign creaking in the faint breeze. The storefront was tucked away on a side street, almost hidden between two larger buildings, as if it didn't want to be found. The windows were foggy with dust, and the dark wood of the door looked like it hadn't been polished in decades. The whole place had an air of mystery about it, like it existed in a forgotten corner of the world, out of time. Tyler hesitated. Are you sure about this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His heart was pounding, a mixture of nerves and anticipation. This was it, the moment where everything could change. Or, or, perhaps, the moment where they'd realize this whole idea was just a wild goose chase. Emma glanced at him and gave a small, encouraging smile. It's worth a shot, right? Right? What's the worst that could happen? We walk in, it's just a regular shop, and we go home. Tyler nodded, taking a deep breath. Yeah, I guess. I guess. But it wasn't just a regular shop. They both knew that. Something about this place felt different, strange, and as Tyler pushed open the heavy wooden door, a small bell tinkled overhead, announcing their arrival into a world that felt far removed from the one they'd left behind. The interior of the shop was dimly lit, with shelves upon shelves of odd trinkets and artifacts, some of which Tyler couldn't even identify. There were old books with cracked leather covers, bizarre statues, and strange, glowing stones. A faint, musty smell hung in the air, mingling with the scent of burning incense. Tyler felt immediately out of place, like he'd stepped into a dream or a nightmare. Hello? Emma called out cautiously, her voice echoing through the shop. From behind a curtained doorway at the back of the store, an elderly woman emerged. She was small and hunched, with long, silver hair that framed her wrinkled face like a halo. Her eyes, though clouded with age, twinkled with an unsettling sharpness. She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that put Tyler at ease. Looking for something specific, dears? She asked, her voice raspy and low, like the creaking of an old wooden floor. Emma stepped forward, her confidence unwavering. We're looking for something special, she said carefully. Something that can help with a transformation. The old woman's smile widened slightly, the corners of her lips curling in a way that made Tyler's skin prickle. A transformation, is it? You've come to the right place. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, glancing around the shop. What was he even doing here? This was insane. He was insane. Who in their right mind believed in magic mirrors or anything like that? And yet, and yet, here he was, standing in a dusty old shop, hoping that some kind of mystical force could change his entire life. The old woman turned and beckoned them to follow. Come, come, she said, her voice a soft croak. I have just the thing. Tyler exchanged a glance with Emma, who gave him a reassuring nod, and they followed the woman through the maze of shelves and strange artifacts. Every step they took seemed to pull them deeper into the shop until the walls felt like they were closing in on them. Tyler's heart raced. His palms were sweaty. This was real. This was happening. Finally, the woman stopped in front of an object covered by a dark, velvet cloth. She slowly reached out and pulled the cloth away, revealing an ornate, full-length mirror. The frame was gold, intricately carved with swirling patterns and symbols that Tyler didn't recognize. The glass itself shimmered faintly, as if it were alive, rippling with energy just beneath the surface. This, the woman said, quietly, is no ordinary mirror. Tyler stared at it, transfixed. There was something about the mirror that drew him in, something hypnotic. He felt like the glass was watching him, waiting for him to make a move. Emma stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. What does it do? The old woman's eyes glinted. It shows you your deepest desire, and if you're brave enough, it can make that desire a reality. Tyler swallowed hard. His deepest desire. He knew what that was. To be taller, stronger, to have the kind of body that would allow him to play on a team without being dismissed the moment he walked onto the court. But it was more than that, wasn't it? He wanted to be someone who fit in, someone who didn't feel out of place in his own skin. He wanted to be seen, to be valued. He wanted to be her, the version of himself he'd never allowed himself to fully imagine. And what's the catch? Emma asked, ever the skeptic. The old woman's smile faded slightly. Once the mirror grants your wish, there's no going back. The change is permanent. Tyler's stomach dropped. Permanent. He hadn't really thought about that. This wasn't just about playing volleyball. This was about changing everything. He'd be giving up who he was. Tyler, the boy who had struggled for so long, and becoming someone entirely new. Could he do that? Did he want to? Emma squeezed his arm gently, snapping him out of his thoughts. Ty, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. But was he ready? Tyler didn't know. All he knew was that he was tired of being overlooked, tired of feeling like he didn't belong. Maybe this was the only way to finally take control of his life. Slowly, he stepped forward, his reflection growing larger in the mirror's surface. The glass shimmered, and for a moment, he thought he saw something else, someone else, staring back at him. A tall, athletic woman with strong legs and an air of confidence that seemed to radiate from her. Her long, dark hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she looked every bit the athlete he had always dreamed of becoming. Tyler's breath caught in his throat. Was that him? Or rather, her? Her? I. His voice trembled as he spoke. I want to be her. The old woman nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Then stand before the mirror and make your wish. Speak it from your heart, and the mirror will do the rest. Tyler's pulse quickened. He glanced at Emma, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. It was now or never. He stepped up to the mirror and looked directly into his reflection. For a moment, he hesitated. What if this was a mistake? What if he regretted it? But then he thought about all the times he'd been passed over, all the times he'd felt invisible. This was his chance. Maybe his only chance. He couldn't let it slip away. I wish. His voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like the words were echoing through the shop. I wish to be a tall, athletic woman who can fit in on the volleyball team. The moment the words left his lips, the mirror began to glow softly, the shimmer in the glass growing brighter. Tyler felt a strange, tingling warmth spread through his body, starting at his feet and slowly working its way up. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, like his entire body was waking up from a deep sleep. He gasped, his hands trembling as the warmth traveled through him. His feet felt strange, lighter, almost. He looked down and saw that they were changing, becoming more slender, more refined. His sneakers, which had always fit snugly, now felt looser as his feet took on a more elegant shape. His legs were next. The muscles in his calves began to elongate, stretching and reshaping themselves. His once stocky legs now appeared longer, leaner, more graceful. He could feel his thighs tightening, his body shifting and growing taller, inch by inch. His jeans, which had always fit just right, now strained against his transforming legs, the fabric stretching as his body grew. Tyler's heart raced as he watched the changes unfold. His hands flew to his face instinctively, feeling his skin soften, his jawline becoming more delicate. His cheekbones rose slightly, and his nose seemed to narrow, taking on a more feminine shape. His reflection in the mirror was changing too, slowly but unmistakably. The person staring back at him was no longer the boy who had walked into the shop. It was someone new, someone beautiful. His chest tightened as he felt his torso shift, his waist narrowing, and his hips widening slightly, creating a more distinct hourglass figure. His shoulders softened, losing their broadness, while his arms became more slender but still toned, like those of an athlete. He could feel the strength in his body, but it was different now, lighter, more refined, built for speed and agility rather than brute force. And then his hair. It grew longer, tumbling past his ears and down to his shoulders in soft waves. He reached up and touched it, marveling at the silky texture. His voice, which had been caught in his throat, finally escaped in a breathless whisper. "It's happening!" Emma stood frozen beside him, her eyes wide, but a smile slowly spread across her face. "Tyler, it's really happening. Tyler, no!" Taylor stared at her reflection in the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. She was taller now, her body athletic and strong, but undeniably feminine. Her clothes hung awkwardly on her new frame, but it didn't matter. She had done it. She had become what she had wished for. She had become her. The old woman watched them quietly, her eyes glittering with something unreadable. "The transformation is complete," she said softly. "There is no turning back now." Taylor took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she ran them over her new body. It felt strange, unfamiliar, but at the same time, it felt right. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally on the right path. Emma stepped forward and placed a hand on Taylor's shoulder. "How do you feel?" Taylor turned to her, a tentative smile playing on her lips. "I feel different, but good. I think, I think I'm ready." Emma grinned. "Then let's go show the world who you really are." And as they left the shop, Taylor couldn't help but feel a sense of hope bubbling up inside her. This was only the beginning. Chapter 3. Adapting to Change. The first few days after the visit to the antique shop felt like a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. Tyler! No! Taylor couldn't quite decide. The transformation had started subtly enough, but the changes were becoming more pronounced with each passing day, leaving her in a constant state of awe, confusion, and, on some days, panic. Panic. At first, at first, it was small things. Her reflection in the mirror looked softer, her jawline less defined, her lips slightly fuller. Her skin, once rough from years of outdoor volleyball practice, had smoothed out, taking on a glow she couldn't quite explain. Her hair had grown out in a matter of days, now brushing the tops of her shoulders in soft waves. The texture was so different, silkier, finer. She found herself absent-mindedly running her fingers through it, trying to get used to the sensation. But it wasn't just the superficial changes. Her body was shifting in ways she couldn't ignore. Her waist had cinched in, her hips had widened, and her chest had begun to swell. Her muscles, once tightly compact and masculine, had softened, taking on a more toned, feminine shape. And every day, it seemed, something new would change. Some days it was her legs, growing longer and leaner. Others, it was her hands, becoming more delicate, her fingers more slender. In the beginning, it was overwhelming. "Emma!" Taylor shouted from her bedroom one morning, her voice carrying an unmistakable note of panic. She stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection, her hands gripping the hem of an old t-shirt that now hung awkwardly on her body. It was too tight in the chest and too loose around her waist, the fabric bunching in weird places as her new curves strained against it. Emma appeared in the doorway a moment later, a toothbrush still in her mouth. "What's wrong?" she asked, her words muffled by toothpaste foam. Taylor gestured helplessly at her outfit. "Nothing fits. I can't wear any of this stuff anymore. Look at me!" Her voice cracked with frustration. "I look like a mess." Emma raised an eyebrow, taking in the sight of her sister, standing there, clearly distressed. She spit into the sink and wiped her mouth before stepping into the room to get a closer look. Yeah, you're definitely not fitting into your old clothes anymore," she said, lightly, trying to ease the tension. "But that's a good thing. It means the transformation is working." Taylor groaned. "I don't know what to wear. I don't know how to dress like this." She gestured down at her new body, still half in disbelief that this was actually happening. Emma smiled, her eyes softening. "It's okay. It's okay, Taylor. You're not supposed to know everything right away. It's a big change. We'll figure it out together. Okay? Let's go shopping. You'll need new clothes anyway, and I can help you pick out some things that will flatter your new shape." Taylor hesitated. The idea of going out in public like this, of people seeing her like this, made her stomach twist into knots. She wasn't ready for that yet. Was she? "I don't know. I don't know." Um, um, she said, her voice wavering. "What if people stare? What if they can tell?" Emma stepped closer and placed a hand on Taylor's shoulder, squeezing gently. "They won't. You're beautiful, Taylor. And besides, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. This is about you, remember? You're becoming who you were always meant to be. The sincerity in Emma's voice was impossible to ignore, and Taylor felt some of her anxiety ease. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Okay, okay, let's go shopping. The mall was busier than Taylor had expected, and the moment they walked through the sliding glass doors, she felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. There were so many people, women browsing racks of clothing, teenagers laughing as they passed by, couples walking hand in hand. It felt like everyone was looking at her, though she knew that wasn't true. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her, like she was an imposter in this new body, walking among them unnoticed. For now, Emma, ever the confident one, took the lead, dragging Taylor from store to store with an energy that left her breathless. She seemed to know exactly what would look good on Taylor's new frame, picking out dresses, skirts, and tops that flattered her newly developing curves. Taylor, meanwhile, felt like an awkward mannequin, standing there as Emma held up outfit after outfit in front of her, offering detailed commentary on each one. This one's perfect for your waist, Emma said, holding up a fitted blouse with a cinched middle. It'll show off your figure without being too tight. Taylor nodded, though her mind was still reeling from the surrealness of it all. She had never shopped for women's clothes before. She had never even thought about what it would be like to wear them. Now, here she was, standing in the middle of a women's clothing store, getting a crash course in fashion from her sister. After what felt like hours, they finally settled into a fitting room with a pile of clothes. Okay, Emma said, handing Taylor a pair of leggings and a flowy top. Try these on first. Taylor stared at the clothes in her hands, her heart pounding. She had worn leggings before, under her gym shorts, like most guys at practice, but this felt different, more intimate, more real. She took a deep breath and stepped into the small fitting room, closing the door behind her. She pulled off her old, baggy jeans and slipped into the leggings, feeling the fabric stretch comfortably over her new curves. Next, she pulled the top over her head, adjusting it so it hung just right. When she finally dared to look in the mirror, her breath caught in her throat. The person staring back at her was beautiful, feminine. The leggings hugged her long legs, showing off their toned, athletic shape. The top flowed around her waist, accentuating her narrow middle and her slightly wider hips. Her hair, which she had hastily tied into a ponytail, framed her face in soft waves. She looked like a woman. She was a woman. Everything okay in there? Emma called, her voice muffled through the door. Taylor swallowed hard, her eyes still on the mirror. Yeah, she said softly. I think so. When she finally stepped out of the fitting room, Emma's face lit up. See? Told you that would look great on you. Taylor blushed, her hands fidgeting nervously at her sides. It feels different. Different good or different bad? Emma asked, studying her carefully. Taylor glanced at her reflection in the mirror outside the fitting rooms, unsure how to answer. Different. Good. I think I just need to get used to it. Emma smiled warmly. You will. It just takes time. Adjusting to her new body wasn't just about clothes, though that was a big part of it. There were other things, small, everyday things, that Taylor had to relearn. The way she walked, for example. Her hips swayed more now, and balancing on her longer legs took some getting used to. Emma spent hours with her, coaching her on how to move gracefully, how to carry herself with confidence. Remember? Emma said one afternoon as they practiced walking up and down the hallway in their house. It's all about posture. Shoulders back, chin out, chin out. Own it. Own it. Taylor tried to follow her sister's instructions, but it still felt awkward. Her body was different now, and she wasn't quite sure how to move in it. Every step felt exaggerated, every shift of her hips unnatural. But Emma was patient, offering gentle encouragement and correcting her stance when necessary. "You're doing great," Emma said after Taylor had walked the length of the hallway for what felt like the 100th time. "You're starting to look like the athlete you always wanted to be." Taylor smiled at that, the words filling her with a quiet sense of pride. It wasn't just about looking like a woman. She was starting to feel like one, too. Slowly but surely, she was getting used to her new body, learning how to inhabit it, how to make it her own. Then there was makeup. Taylor had never worn makeup before, not even for fun. It had always seemed like something foreign, something that didn't belong in her world. But now, with her new face staring back at her in the mirror, Emma insisted it was time for a lesson. "I'm not saying you have to wear makeup all the time," Emma explained as she spread an array of cosmetics across the bathroom counter. "But it can be fun. And it's a good skill to have, you know, just in case." Taylor looked at the collection of products with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. There were powders and brushes and tubes of mascara, all things she had never really paid attention to before. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Okay, let's start with something simple," Emma said, grabbing a small tube of foundation. "This will help even out your skin tone." Taylor watched as Emma dabbed a small amount of the product onto her face, blending it in with a sponge. The effect was subtle, but noticeable. Her skin looked smoother, more polished. Next came mascara, which was a whole different challenge. "Just look up and try not to blink," Emma instructed as she carefully applied the mascara to Taylor's lashes. Taylor did her best to follow instructions, but the sensation of the brush near her eyes made her flinch. "Relax, relax," Emma said, laughing softly. "It takes practice." When they were finally done, Taylor looked at herself in the mirror, her breath catching in her throat. The transformation was subtle, but it made a difference. Her eyes looked bigger, her features more defined. She looked pretty. "How do you feel?" Emma asked, watching her closely. Taylor smiled. A small, tentative smile. "I feel good." But even as her body changed, even as she grew more comfortable in her new skin, one thing remained constant: her love for volleyball. If anything, the transformation had only deepened her desire to play. Now that she had the body she had always dreamed of, she was more determined than ever to make the women's team. Every day, she trained. She ran drills in the backyard, practicing her serves, her spikes, her blocks. Her new body felt lighter, more agile, and with every session, she grew stronger, faster. Emma helped where she could, tossing the ball for her to spike, encouraging her to push harder, to jump higher. "You're getting better every day," Emma said one afternoon as they took a break from practice, both of them sweaty and out of breath. Taylor smiled, wiping the sweat from her brow. "I don't know. I still have a lot of work to do before tryouts." Emma shook her head. "You're going to make the team, Taylor." "I know it." Taylor wanted to believe her. And maybe, just maybe, she did. But there was still one more thing she had to do before she could fully embrace her new identity. One final step. She had to tell her parents. And that, more than anything else, terrified her. Chapter 4. The New Normal. The changes were happening faster now. Every morning, Taylor would wake up and notice something new. Her hips a little wider, her chest a little fuller, her skin softer. It was as if her body was finally catching up to the person she had always wanted to be, the person she had wished for in front of that mysterious mirror. Her voice, too, had softened. Where there had once been a sharpness, a roughness, now there was a smooth, lilting tone that startled her every time she spoke. It was strange at first, hearing herself sound so different, but with every passing day, she grew more accustomed to the sound. It was becoming part of her new normal. The most noticeable change, though, was her body. Her muscles had reshaped themselves almost entirely. Where once she had been compact and muscular from years of training, her body had now taken on a more toned, feminine form. Her arms were still strong, but they had a leaner, more athletic look. Her legs, once stocky, had lengthened, giving her a graceful, almost effortless stride. Her chest had begun to swell, slowly but surely, and her narrow waist now flared into hips that gave her an unmistakably feminine silhouette. The transformation was undeniable. Tyler was becoming Taylor, both inside and out. It was a lot to process. Most days, Taylor marveled at her reflection, fascinated by the changes that seemed to happen overnight. Other days, she felt overwhelmed, unsure of how to navigate this new body, this new identity. But through it all, Emma was always there, her constant, her guide, the one person who never wavered in her support. One night, Taylor sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing a simple tank top and shorts, her long legs stretched out before her. Her hair, now reaching past her shoulders in soft waves, framed her face, which had become more delicate, more feminine with each passing day. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, and her hands rested gently on her thighs, fingers slender and elegant. She turned her head slightly, studying the way her collarbone jutted out just beneath the surface of her skin, the subtle curve of her neck. It was still strange to see herself like this, to see a woman where there had once been a boy. But it was also exciting. This was what she had wanted, wasn't it? To finally feel like she belonged in her own skin? To be seen as the person she had always felt she was on the inside? Yet, there were moments when the enormity of it all would hit her like a tidal wave, and she'd feel like she was drowning under the weight of her own transformation. The changes were physical, yes, but they were also deeply emotional. She was no longer just Tyler, the boy who couldn't make the volleyball team, the boy who had always felt too small, too weak, too invisible. She was Taylor now, a woman with a new body, new possibilities, and a new future. And that future, while exciting, was also terrifying. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Taylor?" Emma's voice called from the hallway. Come in," Taylor said, her voice still catching her off guard with how different it sounded. Emma poked her head into the room, her face lighting up when she saw her sister sitting there. She stepped inside and sat down next to Taylor on the bed, her hand resting gently on Taylor's knee. "How are you feeling?" Emma asked, her voice soft but concerned. Taylor hesitated, trying to put her feelings into words. I don't know," she admitted finally. "Some days, I feel amazing. Like, I look in the mirror and I can't believe it's really me. I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. Emma nodded, encouraging her to continue. But better days. Taylor's voice wavered, and she struggled to find the right words. Other days, it feels like too much. Like, like everything is happening so fast, and I don't know how to keep up. I look in the mirror, and I see this beautiful woman, but I don't know if I'm ready to be her yet. Does that make sense? Emma's expression softened, and she squeezed Taylor's knee reassuringly. It makes perfect sense. You're going through something huge. Taylor! Taylor! It's normal to feel overwhelmed sometimes. This isn't just a physical transformation, it's emotional, too. You're not just changing on the outside, you're changing on the inside. And that takes time. Taylor sighed, leaning her head against Emma's shoulder. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I'm scared that people won't accept me, that I won't fit in, that I'll never really feel normal. Emma wrapped an arm around her, pulling her into a comforting embrace. You are normal, she said firmly. You're just finding a new version of yourself, and it's okay to be scared, but you're not alone in this. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Taylor closed her eyes, letting the warmth of Emma's words wash over her. She felt a sense of relief, a momentary reprieve from the fear and uncertainty that had been gnawing at her. Thank you, she whispered. Emma smiled, pressing a soft kiss to the top of Taylor's head. Anytime. Over the next few weeks, Taylor continued to adapt to her new body and identity. With Emma's help, she learned how to move with more grace, how to carry herself with confidence. The way she walked, the way she spoke, the way she interacted with people, it all shifted subtly, but significantly. Dressing in female clothing became more natural, more comfortable. At first, the feel of soft fabrics against her skin had been strange, almost unsettling, but now it was second nature. She no longer fumbled with bras or struggled to find the right fit in jeans. With Emma's guidance, she learned how to accentuate her curves without feeling self-conscious, how to dress in a way that made her feel strong and powerful, yet feminine. Makeup, too, became less of a challenge. What had once been an intimidating array of products and brushes was now a tool for self-expression. On days when she felt like it, Taylor would sit at the vanity Emma had set up for her and carefully apply foundation, mascara, and a hint of lipstick, marveling at how these small additions could enhance her features. She didn't wear makeup every day. Some days she preferred the natural look, but having the option made her feel in control of her appearance in a way she never had before. But it wasn't just about the physical changes. Internally, Taylor was beginning to embrace her new identity more fully. She had adopted the name Taylor shortly after the transformation had begun. At first, it had felt strange, like putting on a costume, but now it felt like a second skin. It was her name now, her identity. She wasn't Tyler anymore. Tyler had been a boy who struggled to fit in, who had always felt like he was on the outside looking in. But Taylor was different. Taylor was confident, strong, and ready to take on the world. One afternoon, Taylor stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting a fitted athletic top that clung to her newly toned body. She had just come back from a run, and her muscles still hummed with the pleasant ache of exertion. Her reflection in the mirror showed a tall, athletic woman with a determined look in her eyes. Her hair, now long and silky, was pulled back into a high ponytail, and her skin glowed with a healthy sheen of sweat. She smiled at herself in the mirror, feeling a flicker of pride. This was who she had always wanted to be, She had worked hard to get here, not just physically, but emotionally. It hadn't been easy, but she had done it. She had become Taylor. Emma appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a smile. Looking good. Sis, she said, her tone teasing but affectionate. Taylor grinned, turning to face her. Thanks. Thanks. I've been training harder than ever. I want to be ready for tryouts. Emma stepped into the room, her eyes bright with pride. You're going to crush it. Taylor! Taylor! You're stronger now than you've ever been. And not just physically. Taylor nodded, feeling the truth of Emma's words settle in her chest. It wasn't just about the changes to her body, it was about the changes to her mind, her heart. Her heart. She had grown in ways she never could have imagined. She had found a new strength, a new resilience, and a new sense of self. I feel ready, Taylor said, her voice steady. I feel like I can finally do this. You can, you can, Emma said confidently. You've been working toward this for so long, and now all the pieces are falling into place. You're not just Tyler anymore. You're Taylor. And Taylor is going to make that team. Taylor smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude for her sister's unwavering support. She didn't know where she would be without Emma, probably still lost, still unsure of who she was or who she wanted to be. But with Emma by her side, she had found the courage to face the changes head-on, to embrace her new life with open arms. Thanks. Thanks. Emma, Emma, she said softly, for everything. Emma waved off the gratitude with a grin. You don't have to thank me. I just helped you see what was already there. As the weeks passed, Taylor settled into her new normal. She grew more comfortable in her body, more confident in her identity. She started introducing herself as Taylor to friends and acquaintances, and while there were a few awkward moments, most people accepted the change without much fuss. It was as if the world had been waiting for her to step into her true self, and now that she had, everything was falling into place. But as much as things were changing, some things stayed the same. Her love for volleyball was as strong as ever, maybe even stronger now that she had the body and the confidence to match her skills. She trained every day, pushing herself harder than she ever had before, determined to make the women's team. She knew it wouldn't be easy. There were plenty of talented players vying for a spot, but she was ready for the challenge. One evening, after a long practice session in the backyard, Taylor sat down on the grass, catching her breath. Emma joined her, sitting cross-legged beside her, a proud smile on her face. You've come a long way, Emma said, her voice filled with admiration. I'm so proud of you. Taylor wiped the sweat from her brow and smiled back. I couldn't have done it without you. Emma shrugged, but her eyes were shining. Maybe, but you're the one who made the wish. You're the one who put in the work. You're the one who decided to become Taylor. Taylor looked out at the setting sun, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling of contentment that she had never really known before. Yes, there were challenges ahead. Yes, there were still things to figure out. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. I'm ready, Taylor said softly, more to herself than to Emma. And she was. She was ready to face whatever came next, ready to embrace her new life, her new identity, her new normal. Because she wasn't just Tyler anymore. She was Taylor, and Taylor was ready to take on the world. Chapter 5. The Choice. The days had been flying by, and with each passing one, Taylor felt more and more like the person she was meant to be. Her body had settled into its new form, the last traces of Tyler fading as her transformation neared completion. She had grown taller, her once broad and boxy shoulders now softened, her hips curving gently. Her voice had taken on a lilting, feminine quality, soft but strong, enough to surprise her every time she spoke. Her chest had filled out, giving her the hourglass figure that was unmistakably female, and her athleticism had only sharpened with time. The changes were undeniable, and with them came a growing sense of clarity. She was Taylor now, not just physically, but emotionally. It wasn't just about the body she inhabited, it was about the identity she was stepping into, the person she had fought to become. But with that clarity came the realization that a choice was looming, one she had been avoiding for weeks. The volleyball tryouts were only a few days away, but the decision she faced was far greater than just making the team. Would she stay as Taylor, embrace this new life she had built, or would she revert to being Tyler, the boy she had been before the mirror had changed everything? The mirror. The thought of it sent a shiver through her. That old woman's words still echoed in her mind. Once the mirror grants your wish, there's no going back. But was that really true? Would she even want to go back? Taylor wasn't sure anymore. One afternoon, as the sun peeked through the curtains of her bedroom, Taylor found herself sitting at her desk, staring out the window. The world outside seemed so normal, people going about their lives, cars passing by, the distant sound of children playing in the park. But inside, her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. She ran her fingers through her hair, long, dark, and silky now, still getting used to how it felt. A small part of her missed the short, easy, to manage hair she had as Tyler, but mostly, she loved the way it framed her face now, the way it made her feel beautiful. But did she really want this to be permanent? Was she ready to fully embrace this new identity? There was a part of her that still clung to the idea of Tyler, the boy who had always been overlooked, who had struggled for so long to fit in. But that part of her was growing smaller every day, shrinking as she grew more comfortable in her new skin. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Taylor?" Emma's voice called from the hallway. "You okay in there?" Yeah. Taylor replied, her voice soft. "Come in." Emma opened the door and stepped inside, a warm smile on her face. She was carrying 2 mugs of tea, and she handed one to Taylor before sitting down on the edge of the bed. I figured you could use a break," Emma said, taking a sip of her tea. "You've been cooped up in here all day." Taylor nodded, though she didn't take a sip from her mug. Instead, she set it down on the desk, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Emma, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" Emma's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of concern. She set her own mug down on the bedside table and turned to face Taylor, her eyes searching her sister's face. Of course, Emma said gently. "What's on your mind?" Taylor hesitated, her thoughts swirling. She had been avoiding this conversation for days, unsure of how to put her feelings into words. But now, sitting here with Emma, she knew she couldn't keep it bottled up any longer. "I've been thinking a lot," Taylor said slowly, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "About everything. About the transformation. About who I am now." Emma nodded, waiting patiently for her to continue. "I've come so far," Taylor continued, her voice growing steadier. "I'm not the same person I was before. I've changed. In more ways than just physically. I've learned so much about myself, about who I want to be. Emma smiled softly, but she didn't interrupt. And I think, Taylor's voice faltered, but she pressed on. I think I don't want to go back to being Tyler. Emma's smile widened, and she nodded in understanding. You don't have to. Taylor blinked, surprised by how easily Emma had said it. But what if I'm not ready? What if this is all too much? I mean, I mean, I've been living as Taylor for a while now, but making it permanent, it's a big step. Emma reached out, placing a hand on Taylor's knee. It is a big step, she agreed. But it's your step to take, and you don't have to make the decision right now. You've already come so far. Taylor, you've embraced so much of who you are, and it's okay if you're still figuring the rest out. Taylor looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. But what if I make the wrong choice? What if I regret it? Emma's hand squeezed her knee gently. Do you regret becoming Taylor? Taylor thought about that for a long moment. She thought about the way her body had changed, the way she had learned to move, to speak, to dress. She thought about the way she felt when she looked in the mirror now, the way her heart soared when she saw the woman staring back at her. She thought about the confidence she had gained, the strength she had found in herself. No, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. I don't regret it. Emma smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. Then I don't think you'll regret staying as Taylor either. Taylor looked up at her sister, her heart pounding in her chest. Emma's words made sense. They always did, but there was still something nagging at her, something she couldn't quite put into words. What if, Taylor began, her voice trailing off, what if things don't work out? What if I don't make the volleyball team? What if people don't accept me for who I am? Emma's expression softened, and she leaned forward, her eyes filled with compassion. Taylor, she said gently, you've already proven that you're stronger than you think. You've faced so many challenges, and you've come out the other side stronger, more confident. You've learned to walk, talk, and move like a woman because that's who you are. You've embraced this new life with everything you have. She paused, letting her words sink in. And as for the volleyball team, Emma continued, her voice steady. Whether you make it or not doesn't define who you are. You're not just Taylor, the volleyball player. You're Taylor, a strong, confident woman who has fought for her identity, who has learned to love herself. And that's what matters. Taylor felt a lump form in her throat, emotion welling up inside her. Emma's words struck a chord deep within her, resonating with the part of her that had been struggling to find clarity. She blinked back tears, her heart swelling with gratitude for her sister's unwavering support. You really think I can do this? Taylor asked, her voice barely a whisper. Emma's smile was soft but determined. I know you can. That night, as Taylor lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, she replayed Emma's words over and over in her mind. The choice was hers to make, and no matter what, Emma would stand by her. But still, the weight of the decision pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. She thought about how far she had come, the late nights spent practicing her walk, the hours spent in front of the mirror learning how to apply makeup, the endless conversations with Emma about what it meant to be a woman. She had grown so much, not just physically, but emotionally. She was stronger now, more confident, more sure of herself. But was she ready to make it permanent? The thought of going back to being Tyler felt wrong. She had spent so many years trying to fit into that identity, trying to be the boy everyone expected her to be. But she had never truly felt comfortable in that skin. Now, Now, as Taylor, she felt more at home in her body than she ever had before. She felt like she was finally living as her true self, but there was still fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what the future would hold. Could she really live the rest of her life as Taylor? Could she handle the challenges that would come with it? As she lay there, her thoughts swirling, she realized something important. There was no going back. Nah, not really. Even if she were to revert to being Tyler, she would never be the same person she had been before. She had changed too much, grown too much. She had embraced something fundamental about herself, something that couldn't be undone. And maybe that was the point. Maybe the choice wasn't about whether to stay as Taylor or go back to being Tyler. Maybe the choice was about accepting who she had become, about embracing the person she was now, regardless of what that looked like on the outside. Maybe the choice was about letting go of the fear. The next morning, Taylor woke up with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. The sun streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. She stretched, feeling the familiar pull of her muscles, the way her body had reshaped itself over the past few months. She sat up, her long hair falling over her shoulders, and smiled. She knew what she had to do. Taylor got dressed quickly, pulling on a pair of leggings and a tank top, her new go-to outfit for morning runs. She laced up her sneakers, grabbed her phone, and headed downstairs. Emma was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee at the table. She looked up as Taylor entered, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Morning, morning," Emma said with a smile. "You're up early." Taylor smiled back, her heart pounding with anticipation. Yeah, she said, her voice steady. "I've been thinking." Emma raised an eyebrow, setting her coffee cup down. "Oh!" Taylor took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I've made my decision." Emma's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything, waiting for Taylor to continue. "I don't want to go back to being Tyler," Taylor said, her voice filled with certainty. "I want to stay as Taylor. I want to live as Taylor." Emma's smile was slow but radiant, and she stood up, crossing the kitchen to pull Taylor into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've come so far." Taylor hugged her back, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. The decision had been made, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I'm ready," Taylor said softly, pulling back to look at her sister. "I'm ready to be Taylor." Emma's smile widened, and she nodded. "Then let's make it official." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Taylor spent hours training for the volleyball tryouts, pushing herself harder than ever before. She was determined to make the team, not just for herself, but as a way to prove to the world and to herself that she belonged. But more than that, she was preparing to fully embrace her new life as Taylor. She and Emma made plans to legally change her name, to update her documents, to take the final steps toward making her transformation permanent. It was a daunting process, but now that Taylor had made her choice, she felt ready to face it head on. The day of the volleyball tryouts arrived, and Taylor stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting her uniform. She had chosen a simple sports bra and shorts, her long hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail. She looked strong, confident, ready. Emma appeared in the doorway, her eyes shining with pride. "You look amazing," she said, her voice filled with admiration. Taylor smiled, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Thanks, thanks. I feel amazing." Emma stepped into the room, pulling Taylor into a quick hug. You've got this, she said, her voice steady. You're going to crush it. Taylor nodded, taking a deep breath. I hope so. You will, Emma said confidently. Because you're Taylor, and Taylor can do anything. Taylor smiled, feeling a surge of confidence wash over her. She was ready, ready to face this challenge, ready to embrace her new life, ready to be the person she had always been meant to be. Because she wasn't just Tyler anymore. She was Taylor, and Taylor was unstoppable. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. The gym buzzed with energy as Taylor stepped onto the volleyball court for tryouts, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished wood floor. The air was thick with the tension of anticipation, the sounds of volleyballs thudding against forearms and echoing through the large, open space. She stood still for a moment, letting it all wash over her, the voices, the movement, the palpable sense of competition. This was it. The moment she had been working toward for so long. Her transformation was complete. She could feel it in every fiber of her being, from the way her body moved with an ease and grace she had only dreamed of, to the way her mind was sharp with focus, free from the anxieties and doubts that had once plagued her as Tyler. Taylor wasn't just a name she had chosen. It was who she was. And today, she would prove that to herself. On the court, in front of the coaches, and alongside the women who would soon become her teammates. She adjusted the elastic of her ponytail, feeling the weight of her long hair bounce behind her as she jogged toward the huddle where the other women were gathering. The tryouts had drawn a large crowd, familiar faces from her school, girls she had seen in the hallways or in passing, but never really spoken to. They were strangers to her, but that didn't matter. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let anything stand in her way. As she approached, she caught the eye of one of the coaches, a tall, imposing woman with short, cropped hair and a clipboard in hand. Coach Simmons. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, and Taylor had heard endless stories about how she pushed her players to the limit, demanding nothing less than excellence. It was clear from the look in the coach's eyes that she was sizing up every girl who stepped onto the court, mentally taking notes, assessing each player's potential. Taylor stood up a little straighter, her heart pounding in her chest. She was ready for this. The tryouts began with warm-ups, jogging around the gym, stretching, a series of rapid-fire drills designed to test agility and reflexes. Taylor's muscles responded effortlessly, her body moving with a fluidity she had never known as Tyler. Her legs were long and powerful, her arms lean but strong. Every movement felt intentional, every step purposeful. She was no longer the boy who had struggled to keep up, who had always felt a step behind. She was Taylor, a woman with a goal, and nothing could stop her. As the drills continued, Taylor became acutely aware of the eyes on her. Not just the coaches, but the other players. Some of them glanced at her with curiosity, others with a hint of skepticism. She wasn't sure what they saw when they looked at her. Maybe just another competitor, or maybe someone unfamiliar, someone who didn't quite fit the mold of the girls they were used to playing with. But that didn't bother her. She was past caring about what people thought. She had spent too long hiding, too long feeling like an outsider. Today, Today, she was here for herself. The first real test came when they split into teams for scrimmages. Taylor was assigned to the second team, an opportunity to prove herself. As she took her position on the court, her heart raced with a mixture of nerves and excitement. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had practiced endlessly, pushing herself beyond her limits. She knew the game inside and out, and she trusted her body to take her where she needed to go. The whistle blew, and the game began. The first serve came fast, a sharp, clean strike from one of the opposing players. Taylor's eyes tracked the ball instinctively, her legs already moving as it sailed over the net. She dropped into position, her arms outstretched, ready to receive. The ball connected with her forearms with a satisfying thud, and she passed it cleanly to the setter. The setter, a girl named Jess, who Taylor vaguely recognized from around school, gave her a quick nod of acknowledgement before setting the ball perfectly for the outside hitter. The play unfolded smoothly, the rhythm of the game pulling Taylor in, her muscles reacting automatically, her mind sharp and focused. Their team won the point, and Taylor couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as she exchanged high fives with her teammates. She could do this. She belonged here. As the game continued, Taylor found herself falling into the flow of it. Her movements were precise, her instincts honed. She dove for balls with a confidence she hadn't felt in years, her body responding with a strength and agility that made her feel invincible. Every pass, every dig, every spike, it all felt like second nature. But it wasn't just about the physicality of the game. It was about something deeper. As she played, Taylor realized that she wasn't just proving herself to the coaches or the other players. She was proving something to herself. She had worked so hard to get here, to transform not just her body, but her entire identity. And now, on this court, she was showing herself that she could be exactly who she wanted to be. She didn't need to be Tyler anymore. She didn't need to hide. She was Taylor, and Taylor was strong. By the time the scrimmages ended, Taylor was drenched in sweat, her muscles burning from exertion. But she felt exhilarated, alive in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The coaches called the group into a final huddle, and Taylor stood among the other girls, her heart still racing, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. Coach Simmons stepped forward, her clipboard tucked under her arm, a serious expression on her face. She surveyed the group for a moment, her eyes scanning each player with an intensity that made Taylor's stomach twist with anticipation. "You all did well today," Coach Simmons began, her voice calm but authoritative. "But not everyone is going to make the team. We're looking for players who are not only skilled, but who show determination, commitment, and the ability to work as a unit." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I've been watching each of you closely," she continued, "and I've made my decisions." Taylor held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment she had worked so hard for. Coach Simmons began calling out names, one by one. Each name felt like a punch to Taylor's gut, the tension building as she waited, her mind racing with a mix of hope and dread. What if she didn't make it? What if all her hard work had been for nothing? Finally, the coach called the last name, Taylor. Taylor's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had made the team. The other girls clapped and cheered, and Taylor found herself smiling. Really smiling. A grin that stretched across her face as a wave of relief and pride washed over her. She had done it. She had proved to herself, and to everyone else, that she belonged here. Later, after the tryouts had ended and the gym had emptied, Taylor stood alone on the court. her hands resting on her hips, her chest still heaving from the exertion of the day. The lights above cast a soft glow over the empty space, and the echoes of the day's events still lingered in the air. She looked around, taking it all in: the court, the net, the stands, the scoreboard. This was where she belonged now. She had earned her spot, not just on the team, but in her own life. She had fought for this moment, for the right to be herself, and she had won. As she stood there, her thoughts drifted back to the journey that had brought her here, the long months of transformation, the doubt, the doubt, the fear, the countless moments where she had questioned whether she was doing the right thing. But through it all, there had been one constant: Emma. Her sister had been by her side every step of the way, offering support, guidance, and love. Without Emma, Taylor wasn't sure she would have had the strength to make it this far. As if on cue, Taylor's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and smiled when she saw Emma's name on the screen. Emma, how did tryouts go? Taylor's fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she typed her response. Taylor, I made the team. She hit send and waited, her heart pounding with excitement. A few seconds later, Emma's reply came through. Emma, I knew it. I'm so proud of you. Taylor grinned, her eyes misting over. She could practically hear Emma's voice in her head, her excitement spilling through the screen. A sense of warmth and gratitude filled her chest, and she quickly typed back, Taylor, thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you. The reply came almost immediately. Emma, you did this. Taylor, all of it. I'm just glad I got to watch you become who you were meant to be. Taylor stared at the message for a long moment, her heart swelling with emotion. Emma was right. She had done this. She had fought for her identity, for her place in the world, and she had won. But she hadn't done it alone. Emma had been her rock, her guide, the one person who had believed in her when she hadn't even believed in herself. She wiped a tear from her cheek and tucked her phone back into her pocket. Taking one last look around the gym, she breathed in deeply, savoring the moment. This was the start of something new. A new chapter, a new identity, a new beginning. And for the first time in her life, Taylor felt truly at peace with who she was. There was no turning back now, and she wouldn't have it any other way.